It's so great to see everyone from around the world. There's Nalini. Hi, Nalini. Hi, and Shanti's there too. Wow, this is so great. And Les. Hi, Les. And Vimala. Hi, Vimala just came on. Wow, it's great to see all of you. And Yolanda Chitra is there. Hi, sweetie. That's great. Hi, Lindia.
Okay, so yeah, welcome everyone. So glad to have you here with us today for our spiritual conversation and practice with Dr. Mala Cunningham. And just to give a brief introduction here for Dr. Cunningham, she's a counseling psychologist and certified yoga therapist in Charlottesville, Virginia. She's an assistant professor at the University of Virginia School of Nursing, where she teaches courses in foundations of medical yoga for health professionals. Dr. Cunningham is also the president of Positive Health Solutions and is the founder and director of Hospital Bed Yoga and the Cardiac Medical Yoga Teacher Training Program. She specializes in neuroscience, yoga psychology, cardiac and medical yoga and mindfulness. And she is an integral yoga minister and a senior disciple of Sri Swami Satchidananda. She has been practicing and teaching yoga for over 35 years. And there's a lot more to say, but I'll leave it at that for now. And to let everyone know a little bit about the structure for today, we'll have about 30 to 40 minutes for kind of an interview style between Dr. Cunningham and myself. And then Mala will lead us in brief guided practice. And finally, we'll open it up to questions from all of you. So yeah, let's begin. Dr. Cunningham, if you'd like to kind of center us and get us started.
Sure. I thought it might be nice to just take a moment and have a brief relaxation moment. I'm also going to do some very powerful practices after a short interview related to neuroscience, yoga, stress, and how we can activate what's called the sattvic energy, sort of a more balanced state. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll do some pretty powerful practices. But for right now, I thought it'd be nice just to have a moment to just collect our energy and collect our connected energy from around the globe. So if you could take a moment and just close your eyes and allow your forehead to relax and your eyes to relax and drop down. Allow your shoulders to soften and melt. And just allow your whole body to soften. And taking a slow, deep breath, inhaling through the nose, deep, deep breath, have a tiny pause, and then a slow, prolonged exhalation through the mouth. And just do this a couple of times, and as you exhale, feel the body relaxing and the mind settling. And then letting the breath return to normal, inhaling and exhaling through the nose. Feeling the coolness as you inhale and the warmth as you exhale at the tip of the nose. And allowing the body and the mind to be fully present and relaxed. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. And then slowly letting your eyes open and coming back, fully present. So I'd like to say it's really so nice to see all of your shining faces. It's great. Great to have all of you here.
Thank you, Mala. It's always, it never gets old. These practices is how I feel, right? Just we get going in our day and we're moving about, we're doing all sorts of things. And then if we can take a few moments to just kind of center ourselves, whatever you want to call it, it feels so valuable. It's like, oh yes, I remember. Is that what it's like for you too?
Absolutely. I still remember so clearly the first yoga class, one of the first yoga classes that I took back in the 70s, and was astonished at how good I felt mentally, emotionally, physically. I just really felt the power of yoga, and it's really guided my life and my career and all of the ups and downs in my life in such a beautiful way. It's just been a really strong foundation and part of my daily life.
I'd like to start with this question that I'll ask is, at this point in your life right now, what matters to you?
Honestly, I think what matters the most, I mean, I think there's like tier one things that matter, tier two, tier three kind of things. But honestly, at this point, and I maybe wouldn't have answered the same way 20 years ago, but at this point in my life, what truly matters is authenticity and being fully present to myself, being authentic with myself, and being authentic with my friends and family and everybody else that I cross paths with. I really, again, as we mature and navigate life's ups and downs, I think we start to settle in on things that really make a difference. And I really do believe authenticity is such an important part. And walking our talk and just being in integrity with who we are and what our belief system is.
Why is authenticity so important?
Honestly, I think that's all there is in life. If we're not in authenticity, then we're in something else that is really not in rhythm and in harmony with the universe and with our own hearts.
Yeah, it seems like, I don't know, just sharing from my experience that there's times when I really feel like, okay, I'm being myself, I'm being Avi. And then there's other times where I'm not as much. At the same time, I think that it's impossible not to be yourself in a way. And for me, kind of acknowledging that it's impossible not to be me leads me to a more authentic way of living. Does that make sense at all?
It does. I think that when I work with clients and also just with my own process, we don't just have one personality. We actually have many different sub personalities. And I think as part of our spiritual growth and part of our own personal growth, I think it's really important to identify what those sub personalities are. So we might have a sub personality that's a people pleaser, or that's the angry part, or that's the depressed part, or that is the funny and humorous part, or the part that is a seeker of truth and that really desires to be connected into something bigger and more sacred and more profound. And I think part of our process is learning and understanding how to use certain parts of our sub-personalities to overcome the more painful sub-personalities or the parts that really don't serve us well. So I think there's different parts of who we are, and they're all true and real at any given moment. But it certainly is important to navigate moving into higher levels of authenticity or higher levels of peace and harmony and balance. and using our higher personalities or sub-personalities again to overcome those more troublesome sub-personalities.
Mm. And is there a process of prioritizing that happens, inside of us, inside the mind, where we kind of we have all these different things like you're talking about, sub-personalities and different intentions of kind of ways of being that we would like to be. Is there a sort of ranking system that happens within us, and therefore is maybe the idea to put being authentic at the very top of the list? So we set the intention that like being authentic is the most important thing to me, and in a way, will that allow us to clear away some of the other maybe less wanted sub-personalities?
I think that if we are familiar with the concept of the koshas in yoga, which it's just a conceptualization of who we are, the different parts of who we are. So we've got a physical body, we've got a nervous system, we've got an emotional body, we've got a mental body, and we've got a part of our bodies that some people refer to it as the higher self, the Anandamaya Kosh, the soul. But I think we can also conceptualize it as the part of ourselves that has a higher level of empathy and a higher level of compassion that we can connect into. So when we're feeling stressed in our lower koshas in our body, when our nervous system is off kilter, I think when we have intention, which in yoga is called sankalpa, when we have sankalpa to want to more activate the higher parts of who we are, the Anandamaya Kosh, the compassionate part, the higher mind, the buddhi, we can use those parts when we can really learn and understand how to do this. We can use those parts to heal and ease stress in the nervous system, in the emotional body, the mental body, and in the physical body. So I think if we just look at it in terms of how do we navigate stress, how do we address and work with pain points inside of ourselves? I mean, I think ultimately that's the biggest question, is how do we conceptualize that so that we're not falling down the rabbit hole when we're in a point of stress? How do we have a little bit of objectivity to be able to navigate that a little bit better? And I was just going to say, I would love to share a quote by Carl Jung, which sort of gets to the heart of dealing with stress and gets to the heart of what yoga is all about. I mean, if I were going to conceptualize yoga or mindfulness in a paragraph, this is that Carl Jung's quote addresses this so beautifully. And what his quote is, what if I should discover that the poorest of the beggars and the most imprudent of all offenders are all within me, that I myself am in need of the alms of my own kindness, that I myself am the enemy who must be loved. What then? So to me, this is such a beautiful conceptualization of healing is about me to me. We can certainly get guidance and support externally, but ultimately it comes down to our ability and our capacity to learn and understand what it means to do a higher level of self-care, to increase our emotional resiliency, which is our capacity to bounce back after some kind of adversity. Let's say we've had a relationship that has fallen apart or whatever. How do we self-regulate? How do we do self-care? How do we take care of ourselves in terms of comforting behaviors, comforting choices? And how do we learn to have a higher level of resiliency, that bounce back effect after we have fallen down in some way, either through pain or getting fired from a job. How long do we hold on to anger or resentment or fear or anxiety? And that's what's called resiliency. And it's such an important part of the yoga practices and what it means to self-comfort and develop self-regulation of our thoughts and our emotional process.
So the self-care, component, and kind of maybe looking at ourselves as our own safekeepers. That's what comes to me when I hear you kind of discussing that, and also being objective, right? So to kind of disengage and distance myself from myself. It seems that a lot of suffering happens when I'm totally in it. I'm immersed in the situation. And then the yoga practice of kind of becoming the observer and just watching, and then maybe even asking the question. And I like to use the third person a lot. It's a little odd, but what does Avi need right now? Or what is Avi feeling? What can Molly use right now? That type of language. Do you find that kind of inner dialogue with the self, or just asking the question, like, what does this person need, even though you're talking about yourself, is helpful?
Well, I think that goes to the heart of the mindfulness practices, and it goes to the heart of the yoga practices. It goes to the heart of Buddhism. It goes to the heart of so many of these self-care practices that we do. And that is having some objectivity around what is going on, being present to it, but not falling into it so much that we lose objectivity, that we lose the capacity to really implement a healing process. So there's this fine line that when we're under stress or when we're under high stress, like at what point do we allow, and then at what point do we start to self-heal and have some objectivity? Because it's so important to not spiritual bypass or psychological bypass or emotional bypass in the name of clamping down on something and overriding our natural emotions and our natural thought process or our natural grieving process. There's a wonderful quote by Shakespeare, and he says that the grief that does not speak whispers to the ever-fraught heart and bids it break. So the grief that does not speak is going to affect us emotionally, physically. Our nervous system gets tied up in a knot. Our vagus nerve at that point can go offline, can get dysregulated. So if I could, I'd like to just take a moment and talk a little bit about the vagus nerve and neuroscience related to yoga. I'd like to just provide everyone with a really nice conceptualization of healing as through yoga, through the lens of yoga and through the lens of neuroscience. So raise your hand if you're interested in me doing that, taking a moment to share that, because I think that's such important conceptualization. So if we brought in the idea of the gunas correlate, the guna means quality for those of you who are not yoga. I think there's some people on here that are not, they're not yoga people. So guna means quality, and there's three qualities that yoga talks about. There's the rajasic quality, which correlates with the sympathetic nervous system. It's overactivation or it's activity. When we're too far in rajasic energy, and it's like at the far end of that continuum, we are in things like panic attacks, anxiety, rage, anger, some of those qualities. If you go to the other end of the continuum, you can be in parasympathetic overdrive, which is clinical depression, lethargy, immobilization, things like that. Now, there's two parts to the parasympathetic nervous system. So I know a lot of times yoga teachers or others, they'll say you want to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, technically speaking, this is correct, but it's a broader than this. And I think this broader part is really, really important. So the parasympathetic nervous system, 70 to 85% of the parasympathetic nervous system is made up of what's called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve, vagus means wanderer, and it's the largest nerve in the body. It originates in the brain and it goes down through the body and it touches in on our eyes, our sense of smell, our ears, our throat, all the major organs the vagus nerve connects with, okay? So when the vagus nerve so-called goes offline, we're in trouble because it doesn't matter what you do. It's sort of like we cannot get out of a sympathetic activation in our system, okay? So the two parts of the parasympathetic nervous system is the dorsal vagal complex. And that's when we're in that parasympathetic extreme. We're in immobilization, fear, shutting down, depression. The other part of the parasympathetic nervous system is what's called the ventral vagal complex. And this is the sattvic energy. This is in yoga what is called sattvic, that balanced place, that harmonious place. And that's the place that we want to cultivate and work with the vagus nerve to get us into that ventral vagal place. When we're in that place, stress hormones go down and happy hormones go up. And that's the beauty of understanding the link between our yoga practices, the breathing, the mindfulness practices, and how it impacts on our neurobiology. And today, again, what I want to share with you is some really powerful techniques that activate and bring the vagus nerve back online in a much better way. It's called vagal toning. And what's so amazing is that so many of the yoga practices that we're doing activate vagal toning and activate this ventral vagal complex of the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's exciting stuff. It's really exciting. So I'll just give you one example. When we teach the 3-part deep breath in yoga, what we're doing is when the pulmonary C fibers are stretched, they release a neurotransmitter called bradykinin. And what bradykinin does is it signals the parasympathetic nervous system to activate. So you don't have any choice but to then feel that relaxation, because bradykinin is the connection between what's happening through the deep breath and the signaling of our nervous system to get the ventral vagal part of the parasympathetic nervous system to activate. And then we relax. We feel the benefit of taking that deep breath. So all of the yoga practices are aimed toward vagal toning and aimed toward activating happy hormones. So I use an acronym called DOSE, D-O-S-E, to conceptualize 4 of the major hormones that are considered happy hormones. So it's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. So the yoga practices are activating the oxytocin, the dopamine, the serotonin, the endorphins. And research is still looking at what part of the yoga practices are doing what to our neurobiology. We're starting to figure out a lot more with the advent of new technology, the fMRI, the QEEGs. We can literally see into the brain, and we can see what parts of the brain are lighting up. We can see new neural pathways that are literally growing in the brain when we have intentionality, when we're doing chanting, when we're doing meditation and attentional practices. We literally see the stress circuitry reducing. And we see what's called the ventral striatum, which is part of the reward circuitry in the brain. We see that lighting up, you know? So what's really exciting is that we are literally now starting to understand how and why yoga works in terms of our neurobiology and in terms of the circuitry in the brain. And just one example, and I know you probably have some questions to ask me, Avi, so I'll just say one more thing. When the amygdala is a part of the brain that is considered the part of our brain that assesses threat in our environment, okay? So what they've seen in fMRIs is that people who are under a lot of stress, and stress could also mean clinical depression. Stress doesn't always mean an activation. It could mean a severe deactivation of our energy. That's also stressful, okay? So our amygdala, when we're under these stress places, they're seeing that people's amygdala are larger than normal. In other words, there's a lot of new neural pathways and neural pathways into the amygdala. And they're seeing the hippocampus have more neural pathways. But when they have taught individuals mindfulness, meditation, and yoga practices, they literally, and this is quite shocking, they literally are seeing the amygdala decrease in size, which means it doesn't have to be online so much. It doesn't have to have as many neurocircuitry in it, going into it, because it's not as active, you see? So I just find these kinds of studies and this kind of concept so important and very fascinating in terms of what the yoga practices and mindfulness can do for us.
Thank you. Yeah, the question that comes to me in relation to, you know, the findings and the science behind yoga and everything is it seems that there's almost two perspectives in a way. There's I do this practice, it feels good, my intuition tells me that it's good for me, and I'm going to do it. The other side is I understand the science, I understand what's going on in the body. Once I understand that, then now, okay, I see the benefit behind doing the practices, I'm going to continue doing it. And maybe there's, I'm sure, crossover between those two things. But, you know, can you speak to just kind of the difference between those two perspectives and from your experience, how people relate to either one or the other?
Can you restate the question? I didn't
Sure.
quite follow.
Yeah. So just like, have you seen that there's kind of this split between some people who just say, I don't need to know the science behind all of it. I do the practice. It feels good to me. That's all that I need to know. I'm going to keep on doing it. Other people who I need to understand what's happening before I'm going to kind of commit to doing these practices.
Sure. I mean, I think both are really valid. For me, I'm a really curious person, and I really want to know and learn.
It's 12 o'clock.
I really want to know and learn and understand why it's working. You know, what I did when I first started my yoga practices, I kind of came in, for lack of a better way of saying it, I feel like I came in the back door in a way. And all of my practices were all about wanting to know, learn, and understand a relationship with God. wanting enlightenment, wanting to achieve samadhi, wanting to have that whole spiritual experience. So for me, what happened is at a certain point, after sort of having this intentionality, it kept falling flat in a way. I mean, once in a while, I'd have some experience that brought me a little closer to feeling like a connection to some universal, something that was bigger than me, some divine connection. But I always came back. Then here I am in my body, living my daily life, going through the ups and downs of living. And what happened for me, because I'm a curious person and I want to know and learn and understand things, I had to come back around go through the front door, so to speak. And what this did for me is it brought me the capacity to create healing in my body, create higher levels of compassion and empathy. It was sort of like I was in the passenger seat in my earlier attempts. And then all of a sudden I moved into the driver's seat of knowing that I can increase oxytocin in my system. And when I increase oxytocin, I have so much more empathy and compassion for myself and for other people. So it just shifted it for me a little bit in terms of helping me to know and understand that these techniques I'm doing, these breathing practices I'm doing, are increasing my levels of empathy, compassion, self-care, self-nurturing, which are foundational ideas and concepts if we're moving toward enlightenment.
Do you think that there's any danger in counting too much on science, though, to tell us what is right? Because in a way it seems, right, especially through the yoga and meditation, right, these practices have been happening for such a long time. And then now, you know, we're having the science that backs up the effect of them. Is this bound to kind of continue into the future a little bit, where science will always be kind of maybe proving what the heart has already known?
Honestly, with what you said originally was using science to tell us what's right. See, I don't see it that way at all. I see it as science and spirituality merging, and one is supporting the other and the other is supporting the other. So I can't remember exactly the quote, but there's a quote by Einstein, something to the effect that you can't really have science without spirituality, and you can't have spirituality without science, something to that effect. I think both are very important, and they both have important contributions to our healing. For me, understanding my neurobiology related to bringing me closer to God is such an important piece.
So interesting. I love that. I wanted to ask you about the power of community or Sangha too, to influence us, right? And you were talking about the gunas, you know, the rajasic energy and the tamasic energy. And so how do the people that we're surrounding ourselves with affect kind of our own behavior?
Well, I think there's always going to be a place where we have to walk a place of discernment. So there are people that are going to pull on us and potentially drop our energy down with their vibration or their neediness. I think there's going to be people that are really inspiring and that we just feel uplifted when we're around them. So I think there's a frequency that people put out, a vibrational frequency. And I've been actually listening to quite a bit of lectures and podcasts on the use of music for healing and vibrational frequencies that help us to heal. And a recent one that I was listening to was, they were talking about, from a scientific point of view, a researcher was talking about that listening to music at 40 hertz creates a vibration in our cell on a cellular level that impacts on our capacity to heal and impacts positively on our immune system. And there's also a thing in music which is called entrainment. And entrainment is when someone is vibrating or something is vibrating at a certain level. What happens is that anyone in that vicinity will then also start to vibrate at that level if it's a higher vibration. There certainly is the potential to go down, but as yogis and other people who are mindful, we know not to let it drop. Okay, but again, that takes some discernment and that takes some practice. So I think that we have to be so solid in our own practices, our own capacity to create a certain vibrational frequency in our hearts and in our minds and in our intention. And we have to open the portal to divine energy and have that come into our system, and to have that intentionality as we walk through our day, which I think it can be so helpful in navigating stress, especially during this time. People are under a tremendous amount of stress and uncertainty. And this kind of uncertainty, whether you are aware of it or not, ripples into the body. But keeping good company, the Buddhism talks about taking refuge in 3 areas. When we're struggling, when we're under stress, when we're not feeling well, Buddhism says, take refuge in the Buddha, the teacher. And if you don't have direct access to the teacher, take refuge in the teachings. Read inspiring books. Keep your vibrational level higher. For myself, every single day for the past, I'm not even sure, 3 or 4 years, like I literally have never missed a day. Pretty much as soon as I wake up, my iPad goes on and I'm listening to chanting and sacred mantras. There's never a day. And then I have that going all day long. I just have it looping over and over again, all the sacred chants and the mantras, creating a nice vibration. The third refuge that Buddhism says to use to help you is Sangha, is spiritual company. And that entrainment concept of being in spiritual company is so important. It keeps us inspired, it keeps us motivated, and it helps us overcome when we're getting into those extremes of sympathetic overdrive or parasympathetic overdrive, helps us get into that ventral vagal part of the vagus nerve. And I'm actually just noticing the time, and I'm thinking maybe this would be a good time to shift and maybe do some practices with everybody so you can totally experience and feel the power of these techniques. I'm just really excited about what that means to impact on our vagus nerve, because it brings us closer to God. When our system is settled and balanced and grounded, it allows that opportunity for us. So do you feel like we're ready, Avi, or did you have some more questions?
No, let's do it. Let's go.
Okay. All right. That sounds great. I made a list of practices that I want to share with you. So let me just pull this up because I want to remember. Oh, there's one thing I do want to share with you, which I think is really exciting. In the medical field, when somebody is having a panic attack or high anxiety and they go to the emergency room or they're in their doctor's office, what they do is what's called the Valsalva maneuver. It's VALSALVA, Valsalva maneuver. And what they're doing is they literally are stimulating the vagus nerve. And they're doing this through breathing practices that are really yogic practices. I just think that's so amazing. So I'm going to share with you some of these types of Valsalva maneuvers, and you're going to go, well, this is yoga. But again, what it's doing is it is activating the vagus nerve. So, and just real quickly, some of the ways that doctors will also work with this Valsalva maneuver or to get the vagus nerve to activate, they'll teach people to cough or gag, hold your knees against your chest, splash cold water on your face. Some of those are also ways that they activate the vagus nerve and kind of asking it to come back online. All right, so other ways that I'm going to share with you today. So if you can get yourself into a comfortable seated position, just by way of a brief explanation, the vagus nerve has what are called afferent and efferent nerve fibers. So off the vagus nerve, these afferent, which go out, and efferent go back in. When we stimulate those afferent and efferent fibers, we're stimulating the vagus nerve. When we stimulate the vagus nerve, we're stimulating and asking the ventral vagal complex of the parasympathetic nervous system to come online. When we ask the parasympathetic nervous system to come online, it releases hormones, that dose concept that I gave you. And then all of a sudden, we feel the sattvic energy, we feel balanced, we feel closer to some divine energy. So there's all these connections and ways that this happens. Okay, let's get started. So sitting comfortably, if you could take 2 fingers and gently massage behind your ear and just down a little bit, maybe an inch or so. You can also split your fingers and go in front of the ear and behind it and gently pressing down. This is just a gentle massage. You may find yourself taking a deep breath or sighing or yawning when you do this. And that's an indication that your ventral vagal complex, the parasympathetic nervous system, is coming online. I know I always take a deep breath when I do this. It's kind of natural. You almost can't help yourself. So let's massage now on the sides of the neck, you know where the clavicle is here? And very gently just massage upward along the neck there. Just softly, gently. And again, what we're doing is we're stimulating the afferent and efferent fibers going into the vagus nerve. And again, you may find yourself taking a deep breath or sighing or yawning. That means it's working. Okay, so now if you could lace your fingers behind your head, elbows out to the side, and turn your head to the right and just have a slight pressure against your hands, not very much. And just wait there until you sigh, yawn, or take a deep breath. When you do naturally do one of those 3, then go ahead and turn your head to the opposite side. And then just wait there till you sigh, breathe, or yawn. And then gently you can come back to center. So can you raise your hand if you did one of those things, sigh, yawn, or take a deep breath? Can you raise your hands if that sort of happened automatically? Yeah, it looks like most everybody had that happen. Don't worry if it didn't happen. It just means you have to stay there a little longer. Okay. I had one person do this one time and she could not stop yawning. She kind of yawned for the next 5 or 10 minutes. She was really activating her parasympathetic nervous system, which was really nice. Okay, now I'm going to show you a very powerful breath technique. And I'll explain how this is done. And then I'll take you through it 1 or 2 times. And then I'm going to have you do it on your own, because I'm a firm believer that I and no one else should tell you what your breath rhythm should be. When we tell people what their breath pattern should be, it can activate some pretty powerful emotions sometimes. And people resist when they don't get enough air or they're doing it according to what you think is right. So I'm a big believer that I'll show you and give you a range that I think might hit everybody. But then when I have you do it on your own for the next 30 seconds or 45 seconds, you follow your own breath rhythm, okay? All right, so how this is done is we're going to inhale. Don't do it yet. I see someone yawning. You've activated your parasympathetic nervous system. So we're going to inhale and we're going to contract the anal sphincter muscles, and you're going to just gently pull up. Okay. Then you're going to do, that's the anal lock, a bandha in yoga. And then we're going to bring the chin toward the chest and we're going to slightly bear down. Again, I'll lead you through it. So if you again could just sit up straight, let's just start by contracting the anal sphincter muscles. Okay. Have a nice exhalation. Inhale. Hold the breath inhaled, chin toward the chest, and then slightly bear down. Hold the breath inhaled, pull the tummy in a little. And slowly release. The body relaxes, the breath comes out. Okay, so I'll take you through it one more time and then you do it on your own. Okay, so anal sphincter muscles contract. Close your eyes if you want. Exhale. Inhale, hold the breath inhaled. Chin down, bear down, tummy in a little. And relax. Deep breath, relax. And now you're on your own. About 30 seconds, find your own easeful rhythm of being able to do this. If you want, when you're holding the breath inhaled, you can say any kind of sacred mantra that will activate another part of the brain. So go ahead and do this on your own for about 30 seconds. And don't forget to do the chin lock when you have the breath inhaled. Take a deep breath whenever you need to. Take your time. Okay, take about 10 more seconds and finish up, settle. Most important, observe how you feel. What's different in your physical body, in your pranamaya kosh, the nervous system, energy body? What's different in the lower mind, which is correlated with our emotional body, the limbic system? Do you feel more relaxed, calm? You're having an oxytocin, serotonin release. Do you feel the mind more settled, relaxed, quiet? Do you feel into the Anandamaya Kosh, the higher sense of connectedness, the blissful sheath? Do you feel grounded and happier, more content in this moment? So let's go ahead and come fully back. Opening your eyes and again, just having a moment of feeling into the power of this simple breath technique and how quickly it impacts on our nervous system, on the sattvic quality, the harmonious quality, the balanced quality, feeling that sense of endorphins being released. And all of this leads to portals inside of ourselves that bring us into those higher places of higher consciousness, feeling more connected spiritually. When we take care of the koshas and we balance them like we just did, it elevates our vibration and it elevates our capacity into higher consciousness and into deeper levels of intuitive connection so that our lives are guided in such a more beautiful way. You know, when we hit stress levels that are high, where there's this much of worldwide uncertainty in terms of our daily life, and people are going through grieving or stress or difficult times, we have the capacity to self-care and to self-regulate. I do think it's important that we have opportunities to grieve along with opportunities to do self-care, but we can't leave out moments of authentic grieving that we might need to do during this time. We have a lot of loss going on, a loss of lives, a loss of our lives as we know it, the loss of normalcy, the loss of different things. For myself, I have the loss, don't laugh, of playing on all my volleyball teams and my softball team, but I've replaced it with biking and hiking, and that's called Pratibhaksha Bhavana. When we run up against an obstacle, we revamp it and we change our thought pattern, and we don't stay in grieving and loss and anger. We have to grieve, and we have to give it its due, but we don't want to drown in it. So I think, do we want to open it up for unmute everyone to ask questions?
Yeah, well, I'll still unmute people one at a time, I think, so we don't get any background noises. And you have a few different ways to ask questions if you would like. You can raise your hand. You can do the virtual blue hand if you want, or you can type your question in the chat box. So is it Jesus? There you go. You can ask your question now.
Hi, Jesus.
Hi, darling. I suffer from a severe chronic nerve damage, and I'm in constant pain. I'm disabled, wheelchair bound, and my pain management told me this week that my sciatic nerve and my bladder nerve are damaged, chronic, and I don't know how to manage the pain. Can you please help me in that, please?
Yes, Jesus, what I would like to offer you is if you could FaceTime me or email me directly, I'll be happy to give you a brief consult how to navigate this a little bit better. I'll show you some techniques that I think will help with your chronic pain.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that sound okay? Because I think that that's such a broad, big topic. Certainly some of the things that we did today will bring the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system back online. When someone is in chronic pain, their sympathetic nervous system really it's in a chronic phase. And that chronic phase continues to stimulate and signal the body to prepare for fight and flight process, to deal with it. So I want to give you some specific things to break that cycle and to bring the parasympathetic nervous system back online. One thing that I want to mention to everybody is that there is such a thing called GABA in our bodies that is naturally a part of our pharmacy inside of our systems. GABA is a neurotransmitter that causes an inhibitory effect in our cells. Cortisol and adrenaline cause excitatory, it causes the cell to excite, okay? So many people, because we get in these chronic patterns of high stress, we have lower levels of GABA. GABA is an acronym. It's GABA-aminobutyric acid. That's the official term for GABA. But we have low levels of GABA. We don't have the capacity. Our capacity is lowered in terms of inhibiting a stress response, okay? But guess what? Research has shown that yoga, mindfulness, and meditation and breathing practices increase GABA levels in the body. So I think it's really exciting to make these connections and find that what the yoga practices do and why they do it so powerfully. So does anyone else have a question or comment? Anyone want to share what that was like for them in terms of, do you feel a difference in your body and the vagus nerve getting activated?
Yolanda?
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for a wonderful talk, inspirational talk. When we did the course in Portugal, I was excited about it. I'm still excited about this amazing topic, which I would like to continue working with it more and more as along my career. And I know you recommended one of the good books, this one, which I'm fascinated by it, but do you have any more recommendations of where can I go to learn more about the neuroscience and yoga topics, and how can I bring my this topic into my teachings? Because I find that I find that when I have got a problem with my body, I try to use my practices rather than go into medication, and it has worked in the past. So I do believe that it does work by own experience, and I would like to bring this forward in my teachings.
Yeah, one of the books that I think is just so powerful, and it's kind of my Bible, really, and it's called Accessing the Vagus Nerve I'm pretty sure that's the title. It's, if not, if I might be off a word or so, but it's Accessing the Vagus Nerve, and Stanley Rosenberg wrote that. And any work by Stephen Porges, Porges, he's actually kind of the founder of the polyvagal theory, which talks about the concept of the gunas. He doesn't use that word, but it's a similar configuration and conceptualization. So if you Google Stephen Porges, you'll find lots of articles and research that he's done using this conceptualization of the gunas and polyvagal theory. So, yeah.
And I just want to thank you very much, because it's lovely. It's like having you in my room. I wish I could bring you all every week into my room to have this discussion. So thank you, Dr. Matt.
Thank you, Chicha. So great to see you.
Okay, we have a couple questions in the chat box here. I would like to ask, I felt lots of heat during the practice. Is it normal?
Yes, it's very normal. It's just our minds being more aware of what's going on in our nervous system. So you're going to create a little heat just by a little bit of the bearing down. It's very normal, and it's really no problem. However, I do want to say that you want to be mindful of your body's capacity and your nervous system's capacity, and you don't want to push it too much. You want to slowly work your way into doing these practices. You know, do just a little bit, a few minutes, and then see how your body is responding. And then slowly, I mean, this is what we all teach. I think Nalini especially is such a masterful teacher. She teaches, we all teach in integral yoga, the middle path, you know, just taking it slow, doing a little bit, seeing how it feels, and then gently increasing our capacity. But I do think one thing that's very important is, in general, we all have to lower our cortisol levels in our body. You know, we have cortisol that enters our body every day. We have cortisol in our body all the time, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to be active and move and wake up in the morning. So we need a nice, easeful, good range of cortisol in our system. But when we're in that chronic phase of cortisol constantly getting generated in that HPA axis, you know, that is the stress looping in our system and then in our brain, you know, we just have to learn to counter that, you know, get more GABA into the system, get bradykinin more activated through the yoga practices. So anyway, was there another question?
Yeah, two more here, actually.
Okay.
Please explain what you mean by the nerve going online.
It's kind of just another way of saying that our vagus nerve can get dysregulated through things like lack of exercise, obesity, too much alcohol, a lot of spicy foods. There's so many ways, poor posture even. Hiatal hernias can affect the vagus nerve and cause it to get dysregulated. So we really have to just do the yoga practices. Really, that's the bottom line. They just bring health and wellness into our daily life and into our system. So I'm sorry, what was the question?
Just explain what you meant by going online.
By going online or offline, right? It just means to bring it into activation. You know, when it's dysregulated, or there's, you know, when we're slouching, we're not getting good energy flow. We're not getting good circulation flow. You know, this is disrupted. So bringing it online, we sit up straight, we have better circulation, we have better energy flow. So that's pretty much what that means.
Okay. Question, do you teach this to cardiac patients?
I definitely teach this to cardiac patients, but it's modified for that particular population. So the answer is yes, but with a caveat that it's modified for that population. So you have to just do a much milder practice.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, Reverend Vimala. Okay.
I just want to say thank you, Mala. This was very enlightening, and it also brings, as an integral yoga teacher and trainer, I think that you bring into into the table so many concepts and vocabulary that should be like in every teacher, integral yoga teacher at least, and students to know themselves and understand fully. It's like what we teach in anatomy with the organs, just to, and integrate it the way that you did so beautifully with the sutras. And you mentioned, and the way that you integrate it as being part of our lifestyle, to think in those terms. When we're stressed out, we can embody and understand what is happening inside. And that can give us power and tools to address at that moment, like you said, being able to objectively get away while we're in the midst of an emotion, so that we can have an immediate effect on that. And I will be, I mean, it inspires me what you said, and I will be looking into how to integrate it into the trainings and giving more. This year you came in and gave a little bit. I want to expand it because I think it's really important. And what you started with, what matters most is authenticity. That's, you know, I totally agree, which is the teachings of Gurudev, to know yourself. To know yourself, then you're authentic. That's how to get to that is so important for each of us. So I am just so glad to be here. Thank you, Avi, and thank you, Mala, and thank you everybody that make this possible.
Yeah. Thank you, Vimala. Thank you so much for sharing that. Vimala is an amazing teacher trainer and has taught hundreds, if not thousands, of yoga teachers through her center in Richmond, Virginia. She's an amazing teacher trainer and teacher herself. So thank you so much, Vimala, for saying that. And I just want to add that if anyone is interested, I do have the Neuroscience, Yoga, and Mindfulness course online. And you can go to, Nalini, maybe you can help me out here. Can you unmute Nalini for a second?
Sure.
Yeah.
Is it hersha.teachable.com?
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, it is.
Did I have it right? Thank you. So yeah, if you
I'll just check. Wait, let me check. I have it in my book.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to.
While I'm looking for it, can you look for it? I just
No.
want to say something, Mala.
Yeah.
I love you. You know, I always, when I hear you speak, like Vimala said, you know, I always learn something from you. As you know, I work very much from instinct, right? But I get the person in to my office, a client, etc., and they need to know these things about the vagus nerve. And every time I've used what you've taught me in the past, and I, especially on the neuroscience course, and I show it to them, and I show the slides to them that you've shown us, and they get so excited. And then from there, when they connect with the science, they go deep into the instinct. So yeah, you come from the front door, which I don't. And I love that you give these tools to us, like Vimala say, because it's wonderful. Every time I hear you, I learn something new. So I just wanted to say thank you. And
Thank you, Nalini. I love you. I love you and Les so much, and I miss you both. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're using this with your clients. Thank you. Nalini runs the Integral Yoga Center in Spain and Gibraltar, and is just a masterful teacher. So thank you both. And Les does amazing video work. And yeah, so thank you both.
And we have your talk on our YouTube channel on the beginnings of Hatha Yoga, which was amazing, which I never knew. And that was amazing. So I think that's a really good one to share.
Yeah, do you want to share where they can access that on YouTube?
Yeah, and I put the link for the workshops that you had mentioned on Teachable in the comments section as well for people.
Okay, that sounds great. Another workshop that's coming up, Amy Wheeler, who she just stepped down as the president of the International Association for Yoga Therapy. She and I are going to be doing a workshop in August, hopefully in person at Yogaville. And the title of the workshop is going to be, I think it's brain science, mental health, and yoga. So anyone that's interested in learning more about mental health related to yoga and brain science, you might be interested in that workshop. So we're really going to do a deep dive into just the emotional and psychological components of the yoga practices and how to heal, and looking at all of that through the lens of neuroscience. And I just want to mention one more thing. In yoga, such an important part of the practices when we're doing the asanas or the breathing or the mindfulness, what we're doing is, our teachers are always saying to us, feel into the body, feel what's happening related to this pose. Where do you feel the stretch point? Take a deep breath. Some of these signaling that we're doing. And from a neuroscience or a neurobiological point of view, what we're doing is what is called developing proprioception. Proprioception is the brain's capacity to be aware of our muscles, our joints, our tendons. So the more we develop these highways, instead of having these highways between the brain and the body be a dirt road filled with potholes, we want to develop through the practices a superhighway, so that both proprioception, which again is the muscles, tendons and so on, interoception is our ability to be aware of all the other things, our breathing, our heart rate, our internal organs. So we want to develop both interoception superhighways and proprioception superhighways, so that we can be more integrated. Our koshas can be more integrated. And we can't do that if the connections between the brain and awareness are full of potholes. So that's just kind of bringing a little full circle. Also why these things are so important. Was there one more question there I see at the bottom, or no?
If it's a weekend workshop that you were mentioning.
I'm sorry?
Was the workshop you were mentioning before, I'm not sure exactly which workshop they're alluding to here, maybe the one with Amy Wheeler, was it? Amy? Is it a weekend workshop?
There's 3 options. One is you can go online to hersha.teachable.com and you can take the online course. The second option, in July, there's a program, hopefully in person at Yogaville, on neuroscience, yoga, and mindfulness. You can come either for the weekend or you can come for the 5-day retreat for the July program. For the August program, I believe that is a 6-day retreat program for the mental health, brain science, and yoga. So there's 3 options there for you.
Great.
Thank you, Leela. Not sure where Leela is, but thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cunningham. Really appreciate your time, your sharing, and the energy that you put into finding these answers and sharing them with all of us. Yeah.
I'd like to, before we end, I'd like to read a quote from, these are two researchers out of the University of Wisconsin in Madison, Wisconsin. And I'd like to also share two resources with you. There are a lot of resources, but just two resources. One is to check out the website called Center for Healthy Minds. And that's Richard Davidson's work. He's a neuroscientist, and he was one of the people that first worked with the Dalai Lama and the monks from the Dalai Lama's lineage, looking at their brain patterns and things like that to see what was going on during meditation and mindfulness and so on. So he's out of his clinic and lab. They have so much wonderful research. So I would just wanted to refer you to there. The second is the Contemplative Sciences Center at the University of Virginia. Lots of programming that you can go online and get connected in, and lots of different really great speakers that they're bringing in that are doing research in the area of mindfulness, compassionate care, empathy, resiliency, some of those kinds of things. So you definitely want to connect in there. So these two researchers are at the University of Wisconsin, and this is a quote from them, which I find really inspiring. It's Fortney and Bonus, and they state, meditation is one of the most important components of any health plan. Its unique ability to elicit physical ease and mental stability provides a foundation for healing and directly influences one's ability to meet the challenges resulting from illness and chronic disease. So we have come full circle. We're integrating spirituality with science, with meditation, with yoga, and I'm really excited about what the future holds for health and wellness and spiritual unfoldment and higher levels of compassion and empathy across our whole planet. So thank you. What a joy to see all of you here. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you again, Dr.
Thank
Cunningham.
you, everyone. Yeah, you're welcome. So good to see all of you. My goodness. And Huseis, please email me or text me, and I'll give you a private consult. Thanks, everyone. Om Shanti. Be safe and well.